so excited to be here today with this amazing group for this Bridges webinar. My name is Cody, and I am the Director of Community for Paragon One, and I will be getting our Bridges webinar kicked off today. And before I hand it over to our amazing moderator, I want to share a couple tips with everyone. At Paragon One, we're dedicated to supporting young people and helping them achieve their career aspirations. And just like these tips, our externships are also really great opportunities to help you get set up for success. So for today's webinar, we want to make sure that everyone gets situated in a place where you can focus, right? Good lighting, no noise. And then we will be inviting people to come on and ask questions later. So we want to make sure that you turn your camera on, take notes, and get ready to ask lots of questions throughout this session too. Now, let me introduce our moderator for today's session, Sheena Doba. Sheena joined Cheddar News in January of 2019 after working as a national correspondent for CBS News in New York. She then anchored a segment called The National Desk with Sheena Doba that aired on 100+ CBS stations across the country every morning. Sheena also reports live from the floor of the New York Stock Exchange, where she focuses on consumer business and economic stories making headlines. During her television career, she also taught journalism as an adjunct professor at Capital Community College and Connecticut School of Broadcasting. In 2008, Sheena became the weekend anchor of WFSB TV, making her one of the first Pakistani anchors in the US. Sheena's won several awards, including an Emmy Award for Best News Coverage on the Newton tragedy, and has earned several other incredible awards since then. Sheena, we're so excited to have you back with us. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Cody. I'm so excited to be back with you guys, folks. Thank you so much for joining us. We have some incredible panelists. I've been doing research on them. They're so experienced. We are so lucky that they're going to share their experiences and their stories with us. So without further ado, I'm going to start introducing them. Let's start with our first panelist. We have Sheena Ghosh. Sheena initially joined Deutsche Bank Hong Kong in 2013. She has since worked across the London and New York-based offices, covering alternatives in various capacities, across fixed income oriented hedge funds through to opportunistic hybrid solutions. Now, prior to Deutsche Bank, Sheena worked for Credit Suisse and Morgan Stanley within Prime Services, primarily focused on macro and systematic macro hedge fund strategies. Sheena holds a BS in economics from Bachelor's in Science in Economics from the London School of Economics and Political Sciences. Sheena, welcome to the show. I can't wait to hear your story. Up next, let's talk about Emily Shao. Emily is a partner at McKinsey from the Silicon Valley office. She is a core leader of the McKinsey Center for Future Mobility and is at the forefront of our mobility disruptor sector. She advises organizations on a range of strategic and operational topics, including developing strategic roadmaps, creating equity stories, accelerating product launch, driving operational efficiency and effectiveness. Emily serves incumbents, disruptors, startups, investors on future of mobility topics. Prior to joining McKinsey, Emily also worked as a program manager at an autonomous vehicle startup. That's something we cover a lot here at Cheddar, Emily. She studied mechanical engineering at MIT and received her MBA from Harvard. Emily, welcome. Can't wait to hear from you. And last but certainly not least, we're joined by Wagner Denuzzo. Wagner is a Latino executive currently leading the future of work talent at Prudential. His team is responsible for organizational capabilities, work and org design, change management, workforce transformation delivery, and organization effectiveness for a future-ready enterprise. Now, prior to this role, Wagner was leading leadership talent transformation at IBM, where he also served as a global VP leadership and management development for the enterprise during IBM's largest transformation in history. There's more on Wagner. He's a talent strategy leader, a leadership organizational development consultant, executive coach, HR strategist for 2 decades. Wagner is a frequent speaker on the future of work, and his ideas are driving a new way of thinking in HR. And God knows we know that, especially during the pandemic. He was born and raised in Sao Paulo, Brazil. He holds a bachelor's degree in communications and earned a master's in clinical social work from New York University. I told you guys, this is an impressive panel. These are such amazing bios. I can't wait for our students to hear your thoughts on internship and culture. We really appreciate as we fit and dive into our Q&A. Are you guys ready? Okay, I'm going to start with question one. And Sheena, I'll just start with you and we'll go around. To start conversation today, let's start off with the panelists sharing some quick highlights of their internship experience. I'm anxious to hear that and what it was like. Sheena, let's start with you.
Great. Well, first of all, it's an honor to be here. And for all the participants, gosh, I'm so excited for you because it makes you think back at the time when, well, at least it does for me, when I was in your seat. And that really is what led to my internship. So to give you context, I didn't know I was going to work for a bank. I'd never heard of a bank. All I knew growing up as a British Indian from a family of doctors was that I didn't want to be a doctor. So it was actually Credit Suisse that came to my school when I was 17, so probably similar age to a lot of you. I hadn't chosen university at this point, and they gave me the opportunity. It was a Women in Outreach banking program at the time, and they gave me the opportunity to go to a bank, the trading floor for 2 weeks. I fell in love with the trading floor. I fell in love with the energy, and I picked my degree. I broke my parents' heart, telling them I didn't want to be a doctor. And that led to me applying. And when it came to the internships, I only applied to Credit Suisse. So I think that to me is the message I would give you is from the get-go, trust your gut instinct. And if someone has given you a chance, whether it's a person or a company or an opportunity that leads the way to a potential internship, trust your gut, because that's someone that has made an impact on you at a very impressionable age, at a very important point in your career, and trust where that path leads you, not what the brands tell you, not what the roles tell you. Trust who has helped your path to that point, because an internship is a stepping stone. That's all it is. So don't overthink what it is in terms of the role, the brands, any of that. Just think of it as the next stepping stone.
I think that's great advice. Emily, same question posed to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Similar to Sheena, super excited to be here with everybody. Unlike Sheena, I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do for my internships and didn't have that exposure experience before I actually entered undergrad. What I knew I loved, though, was solving hard problems. So that's why I decided to study mechanical engineering. And I actually had a bunch of internships and externship opportunities. And the kind of frame of mind I used for my internships was, it's an opportunity for me to really get deep and exposed to a company and figure out kind of what worked best for me. What kind of topics was I interested in? What kind of company culture would work better? What types of kind of pace and lifestyle and just like the content. So actually the summer after my freshman year in undergrad, I did an internship as a mechanical engineer for an engine company. Sophomore spring, I did an externship for a hedge fund. And then sophomore summer, I did an internship at an investment bank. And then junior year summer, I interned at McKinsey. So I got to have basically over the course of kind of my 4-year in undergrad, these different super diverse experiences across different industries. They gave me a chance to basically then step back and say, okay, across all these experiences, where did I feel like I was going to have the most impact, the most exciting kind of match and fit for my own kind of career goals? And that ended up being McKinsey. And that was like, that was quite a while ago and I'm still here. I left. So I actually left McKinsey and went to go work at this autonomous vehicle startup. And came back a little over 2 years ago. And so I've done a lot of career exploration and I just keep coming back to McKinsey because of kind of the fit, which we'll talk about more, but also it all comes down to kind of what I cared about at the very beginning, even when I chose my degree, which is I love solving hard problems, and kind of my mechanical engineering degree coupled with kind of my experiences. Now I do all my work in mobility, but on the consulting track. So happy to go to more, but that's been my personal experience.
Okay, looking forward to hearing more from you, Emily. And Wagner, I would love to hear your experience.
My experience is so different. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me because I'm very passionate about helping others be successful. If you think about the mindset of those organizations that are welcoming you, you have to assess for their commitment to making you successful, because that's what we are doing in every organization. So my experience was a little different. I came from Brazil as an immigrant with no money, no English. So I had to be an immigrant for a while. So no internships, just busboy work. And then when you get to a master's degree, then I start getting to internships. But mine was very different because I went to the clinical side of the work and I work in underserved communities in the Bronx. And a lot of the experiences I got as a master's degree intern was really understanding human behavior. And if I have to transfer my skills into corporate world, and today I have worked in global companies, I have done a lot of work in executive corporate environments, is that you need to assess what experience is going to give you the greatest challenges in learning about human behavior, collaboration, and creating value. The critical skill that you're going to have to develop is collaboration, co-creation, and being able to assess people for where they are. So don't be afraid, but instead of finding a cultural fit, try to find a company that wants a cultural add. Because as diverse interns, I think your goal is to change the corporate world for the better. So don't forget about that.
Wagner, can I stick with you for a minute? I want to talk about something you said. I would love to ask you about your highlights of what your internship experience was like, especially coming into this country. And what did you feel part of the company's work culture then, even as an intern?
No. No, because as an immigrant from Brazil, when you don't speak the language, things are not that easy. And I tend to be more authentic, and it was difficult for me to understand what are the behaviors, the etiquettes that I had to follow. But don't be afraid, because I think we need to understand what's acceptable, of course, because cultural norms are cultural norms in the company you're going to, but also be focused on the needs to learn, because as a learner, you ask a lot of questions, and I ask a lot of questions, but I didn't feel that I belong. It took a while for me to feel that I belonged. So don't assess the company that makes you most comfortable, because maybe that company is not the right one for you.
Great advice. Emily, I'm going to pose the same question to you.
Yeah, I would say very similar to Wagner. Whenever you join a company, I don't think you join, you're like, oh, this is comfortable, this fits. I think like the very first couple of weeks for any internship I did, I was running around with a notebook, like jotting down all these acronyms, creating like a dictionary for me to just understand the lingo, trying to map out who's who. It is uncomfortable. And I think it's really about, from a culture perspective, do you feel like it's a place where you can express your perspective, where you can have a point of view, where you are celebrated for what you bring to the table? I think those are the types of things that I was personally looking for. I was not solving for comfortable. I think things at McKinsey in general now for me still are not comfortable because I'm being pushed to grow every single day. But I feel like I have the kind of opportunity and the platform to be myself and to have a perspective and to express that perspective. And that's what I was solving for.
Sheena, you.
These are really great perspectives, and it sort of adds to, I'm going to touch on both points actually. So I'm going to come to the immigrant. So I'm firstborn immigrant, but my parents were a similar story to what Wagner said. They were doctors, they met in London, they came, and they always tell me I came with X pounds, and it was very, and it's been something that's ingrained in me. I'm very, very lucky, but I've never forgotten the roots. And I think when you come from either with your immediate family or your surroundings, and you're given an opportunity, you never lose that gratitude for having a chance. And I encourage you to hang on to that, because that is the feeling that keeps you humble, keeps you grounded, keeps you and authentic to yourself. And as you get more senior and similar to Emily, like every year or two, I'm assessing, should I leave? Should I leave? And people always say to me, how do you keep, talent? And I'm like, well, stop trying to change them. They have to be authentic to themselves. And what's kept me in my seat, whether I've moved country, company, or region, has always been reflecting on what my own goals are as an individual, as a person. And I would encourage you to do the same, because don't separate your career from your personal motivations in life, because they're part of the same thing. Like your health is tied to both, your happiness is tied to both, your life is tied to both. So don't separate the two. And that comes down to the cultural fit. Is it's okay if something doesn't feel right. It doesn't mean you failed. I mean, a cultural fit works both ways, and it's got to feel that, like, if it feels like you're having to put on a face and it's exhausting and you're on show every day, it's probably not the right cultural fit for you. And that's okay. Like, acknowledge that early on, and don't associate it with failure, because there's no such thing as failure. There's different types of cultural backgrounds and people, and you will find a like-minded fit, whether it's within a team, within a big company, or whether it's the company ethics themselves that sort of filter down from the top.
You know, I wish these panels existed when I was fresh out of college, because this information is so useful. Emily, I'm going to start with you for the next question. How have intern experiences changed since you were an intern? And what does your company do to show interns that they belong in the company's culture?
Yeah, honestly, from my experience at McKinsey, I don't think much has changed. When I look at the interns that kind of are coming through our process now versus when I was there 12 years ago, the experience is largely the same. I would say the tools are better, the technology is better, the kind of solutions and the types of problems we're solving are very different, right? So most of my interns this summer are working on like autonomous vehicle technology problems, sustainability problems. Whereas I think back in 2010, it was like, okay, we're coming out of a recession. How do we cost cut? How do we make the bottom line work, right? So I think the types of problems we're solving are different. And it feels more purpose oriented, which I love. But then a lot of the things that are the same is, so for specifically internships at McKinsey, we make sure that we bring on interns and actually put them on specific projects where there is a clear mentor and coach to guide them through the entire journey. So that way there is somebody there kind of holding their hand and showing them how the company works and kind of making sure that first uncomfortable few weeks eventually becomes something that they're more used to, and is kind of like the go-to person to ask the quote unquote silly questions, but also having a partner buddy coach as well. So those kind of core practices have still prevailed over the last decade plus from when I was an intern, but I see the main differences being just around the types of problems we solve. I think the other tricky thing that we did see in COVID, right? So it was a lot of these internships had to be kind of remote. And I think that was not that great of an experience for everybody. So it's actually really exciting now in 2022, kind of people are being back on the ground and in team rooms together. And that's kind of the experience that I had that really kind of closed the deal for me to come to McKinsey full time.
Sheena, if I can pose the same question to you.
No, it's a great question. And I mean, I graduated in 2005, so I'm sort of 2 decades ahead of a lot of you. And I think what's something that is very important to bear in mind is quality over quantity. And what I mean by that is, as an intern, whether it was my generation or I see it even more in the current generation, it's almost like a bit of a rat race. Like, I need to get time with XYZ person. It's all sort of, it becomes a stressful, competitive, forced networking aspect, and it's received that way as well. So that's just something to bear in mind, is think about what you're asking for. So if you're asking someone for 30 minutes of their time, spend a bit of time to figure out on your own, like, what is it they do? What do I want to get out of this conversation? Take notes. And the amount of times I get people say to me, I want a career in fixed income and currencies because that's what it says in my LinkedIn profile, baffles me, because don't tell me what you think I want to hear. And a lot of senior people you'll meet will say the same things. Be authentic to yourself, because that is what's memorable, particularly in a generation that is a race of technology and instant gratification. And let me tell you how much I know. People aren't going to hire you because of what you know. That's not what the expectation is. They're going to hire you because they see potential in you. They see tenacity in you. And by tenacity, I mean drive and passion. And those are authentic to yourselves. And my guess is the fact that you've all dialed into this is that's an innate part of who you are. So don't overthink what it is you need to say or the amount of time you need in front of. Think about the quality, because that's what they'll remember.
I love that both of you, all of you really, have mentioned the word authenticity, because I think a few years ago that never would have been discussed. Wagner, if I can ask you the same question. I think you're on mute, Wagner.
Oh, I was on mute because I have a bird and I want to avoid the chirping. But I have a recipe for you. And I have been through so many years of welcoming interns. And I have to say there are 3 C's that I go by, because we need to start developing our leadership skills at the first opportunity. So don't wait until you become a manager. Start now, because you need them. Curiosity, courage, and compassion. Those 3 C's are going to take you much farther, because the skills you are going to learn There are plenty of skills enablement for you to learn, but you need to be always curious. And I love when interns from across the company today contact me, even if they're doing something in retirement, I'm in HR, and they want to know about me, they want to know about what I do. So make sure that use this space for yourself to be curious and reach out to whoever you want, because that's the new world. And the courage to ask the questions when you don't know, because confidence is not about what you know. Confidence is just the ability to learn. If you know you can learn, be confident, show up. And compassion, because there will be people who are going to irritate you. There will be people that are not going to make you happy. And you have to be compassionate, because you never know why the situation is happening in front of you. Just be cognizant. You know, we are going through a stressful time. Being compassionate towards yourself as well. You don't need to be perfect. I leave you with those three.
Wagner, if I can stick with you for a second, the conversation that we're having now about be yourself, be authentic, do you think we had that when we started in the business, or do you think that has evolved in the last few years, maybe even due to the pandemic, or just maybe naturally evolved?
Good question. I think we evolved, and that's the beauty of where we are right now. Very difficult times, but very optimistic times, because when I started at a global company, for example, somebody said, Wagner, you're too provocative. I wouldn't say what you say, because you're not going to become an executive that way. Of course I did, and I'm very successful, but there's some people that are afraid of the new ideas that you bring to the organization. So measure how you communicate, because that's important. How you communicate is really important. But also don't listen to every single piece of feedback, because when I was beginning my career, I think it was much more difficult to be authentic. Nowadays, actually is a priority.
I love that. Sheena, what about you?
I completely agree, and I'm laughing because when I was up for managing director, everyone said to me, go and speak to XYZ on the Exco. And I'm like, these are human beings. I'm not going to go and speak to them just for the sake of it. There's a process. I'm going to trust the process. And everyone was like, no, you have to be. And I was like, look, if they promote me, they promote me. If they don't, they don't, whatever. I am going to be myself. I do my job well. Let's see what happens. And it's refreshing because you see that happen more. And to Wagner's point, when we were growing up and in our careers, you were encouraged to be a certain way. And I have my parents to thank that I was always unfazed if I was speaking to a junior person or a senior person. So I've always been consistent. And I think that is probably the biggest gift my parents gave me. And I've had that from first, month of my career all the way through to my 16th year of my career. And that's what I encourage juniors. Like the amount of times people say to me, oh, I never know you work for an investment bank. I'm like, great, thank you. That's a compliment. It doesn't define me. It's my job. I have brought my core characteristics and I bring that benefit to my role. And I always have done, I've always had that mindset. So your integrity is your biggest asset. And that feeds through to your curiosity, that feeds through to your emotional intelligence. And by the way, to Wagner's point, emotional intelligence is something that's only even been recognized in the last 10 years. 90% of the people you meet in your career won't have any. And if anything, flip the way you see that. I used to get really annoyed when I was underestimated. When I first moved to Hong Kong, everyone thought I was an assistant, and it really bothered me because I went to a good school, stopped judging me, and it was some very senior people that said to me, if people want to underestimate you, that's on them. And it changed my whole mindset. So if you meet someone that is clearly lacking in some sort of emotional intelligence, don't get annoyed by it. Almost pity them and see if you can help them. Because if you have it and you have it at the start of your career, you are set up for success in a way that 90% of people don't have, regardless of what school they went to. That is a powerful skill to have. So if you have it, own it, protect it.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because for me, that didn't come until later in my career. I wish I knew that or realized that early on. Emily, if I can ask you the same question.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the authenticity of kind of being who you are is just so important for your mental well-being as well, and to truly unlock your full potential. If you think about, if you had 100 chips in your brain and 50 of them are thinking about, okay, what should I be how should I be perceived? What's the perfect way to say this? Blah, blah, blah. You only have 50 chips then in your brain to actually think and do the work. Whereas if you can actually truly be authentic and express your perspectives, I think that actually unleashes your potential and you have way more fun, right? On my teams where we have some of the interns, I think like the interns who are always really nervous and shy and don't want to say anything because they're afraid they're going to mess up and have this fear-based mindset, I just don't get any read on them. I can't help them. Whereas the interns who they're out there, they're humble still, they know that they're learning, but they're willing to put out a point of view and have a perspective and try, I can coach them and I can see where they're at and I can actually enable them to get better. So it's actually, what's your mindset? Is it a fear-based mindset or is it an opportunity-based mindset? And the opportunity-based mindset, people will make mistakes because they're going out and taking more shots, but they will also grow and evolve more. And the other thing too is being authentic is not the same as not being professional, right? You must maintain professionalism. And being authentic means you can have a very different point of view, but you can express it and communicate it, as Wagner said, in a very professional way. So there's some kind of learning curve here in terms of how do you be authentic to yourself, but still communicate potentially very different ideas or perspectives in an impactful, empowering way that elevates you versus kind of puts you in the non-professional bucket. And then maybe, I know this isn't a C, but to add an H to Wagner's piece is humility, being humble. So I think there is a balance too of being courageous and confident, but also being humble enough to recognize you're early in your career that you will be getting a lot of feedback. You don't have to take any of it or all of it, but being able to hear it and then making the assessment for yourself, what should stick and what should move forward. I think for the first 4 years of my career, including my internships, I kept a running Excel where anyone who gave me feedback anytime, I would log it. Who said it? What was it about? And like, what was the project about? And it would just help me see patterns and understand like, hey, this person said this, and I heard this 4 or 5 times. Maybe it's something I should think about. This person said that, didn't like working on them, disagree, gonna ignore. But that way, kind of, it helps you continuously evolve as well, while also being confident.
I think this is invaluable advice. I have one more question for the panelists, and then we're going to get some questions from students. And Sheena, I'll start with you for this one. Let's call out the elephant in the room, fit. Traditionally, companies have used this word in such an exclusive way. And to that end, people today kind of use fit in a negative way. But when we redefine it or use it in a new word or sentence altogether, it's a game changer. So why does that matter? What's the importance of talking about the culture add or value add as opposed to fit? And Sheena, again, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point. I'm actually going to come back to something Wagner said earlier. So if I think about, I'm British born, Indian background, and I didn't work for an American company till 6 years into my career. And I think if I had started my career in an American company, I probably wouldn't have thrived as much. And I'll explain why. I grew up in European culture. I grew up with an Asian background, and there's just there's a more layered way of how people communicate, how people operate. Like if you join an American company, there is still, and it's changing, but there's still a very sort of like put yourself forward, like fake it till you make it. Like it's very much ingrained in American culture, and you can't change that. And so if you know that you're someone that can't do the fake it till you make it thing, then bear that in mind. So I think when you think about fit, start with you. Because the word fit, I can tell you every bank, every consultant, every crypto firm, whether it's a new one or a big one or a private equity firm, there's so many, you're at the point where you have invested in yourself, you have worked really hard, you have so many choices, and most important, and I want you to take this away, you cannot fail. Every experience in life is an experience to learn and reflect. And that's a job experience, that's a conversation. So to come back to Emily's point of the spreadsheet, like if you're not a spreadsheet person, that's okay. What she's explaining is the feedback loop, right? You're having this different opportunities for someone to hold a mirror up to you to say what resonates with you, what helps you thrive, and what actually is indifferent to you, and what actually is detrimental to you, as in takes away from you. So you do that feedback loop. This is your journey, this is your life. Have as many conversations respectfully and take what feels good for it, and the other ones respectfully decline in your system. Like everything is the opportunity to learn and reflect. And if you go into your professional and personal life, like you will end up 5 to 10 years down with a network, personal and professional, of people that really understand you and will help you thrive, not just grow, thrive.
I think that's great advice. Emily, if I can ask the same question to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I love everything that Sheena said. And for me, I think it's less so a fit, to your point. It is, to me, it's values. and do your personal values align with the values within that institution or that company. And sometimes these values are written, sometimes they're not. Sometimes there's values that are written and different values are lived, but it's actually, and that's what's the beauty of these internships, to understand what are the values of this company. Do they value having diverse perspectives? Do they value solving the problem? Or do they value more kind of purely commercial success? Do they value sustainability? What are the values? And you can, again, see what they have written, but really observe what the leaders of the company are saying and how they act. The behaviors and actions mean so much more than words. And that's what's amazing about internships. You actually get to kind of be immersed in it and observe it for yourself. And maybe this is taking the analogy too far, but I think it's similar for finding like a partner in life, right? Your spouse, it's all down to values, right? You're going to be at this job 40 plus hours a week. You're going to be married to this person, hopefully for the rest of your life. You're spending a lot of time with that person or that company. You've got to make sure the values align, and the little things on the edge can be a little off, both for the company and for your spouse. But if the values are there, you will find a way to make it work in the long run.
Wagner, same question.
I love this. The company is a little less risky, let's be honest.
It is easier to leave, right?
But what you said connects to my first experience. You know how I got a job at IBM? I couldn't get through the regular ways, and I tried to contact somebody that I saw that was a VP of talent, and I just wrote to him, I have the confidence and conviction that I can add value to your company. He turns to me and says, your resume is interesting, but what would I do with you here? I said, I don't know what you would do, but I can be your greatest cultural evangelist because I truly believe in your values. In 3 weeks, I had a job. So it's values-based. You have to promote what you bring to a company is your values, your integrity, and your willingness to learn and contribute and add value. So with that, you can do it. But the fit piece, I think it's important to be in situations that you don't feel comfortable. It's important to be in situations where you don't belong to, because you learn about yourself. And the last thing I say is the destination. What I see today, it wasn't my experience as a Brazilian person, I guess. Wasn't my experience to have a goal, my destination is going to be this person, the CEO or anything. But if you have just a destination in mind, you lose sight of all the detours and the service stops that can lead you to even more gratifying places. So don't forget that. I know you have a destination, but don't be blind to the opportunities that show up, because those detours can take you to a much better destination.
Yeah, that is so true. I think all of us can agree. We wish we knew this when we first started as interns in our respective careers. Panelists, thank you so much for your perspectives. Students, we're going to invite you to ask questions. Please make sure your camera is on, you're unmuted, and you introduce yourself with your name, school, major, and year. If I pronounced your name incorrectly, apologies in advance. Please say it correctly. And here, I'm going to start with Shamim Wasi. Shamim, are you there? The question Shamim is asking is, what is an individual supposed to do as an intern who is motivated to work, but the supervisor is just not interested in what you're doing for the company or organization? Who wants to take that? Sheena, let's go.
Okay, I think that's a really good question. So very, very smartly done, because I think especially at the early level, if your immediate sponsor, i.e. the person you're working for or the person that brings you on is almost capping you, then that's how you lose the opportunity and how the company loses talent. So it works both ways. The best thing you can do, and this is where the concept of networking almost gets diluted. People see networking as stressful, of like, who can I meet over drinks because I have to? No, networking, change your mindset about the concept of networking. It's about finding people that have similar values to you. And that doesn't necessarily have to be in your immediate sort of sphere of influence, i.e. your immediate boss or the person that hired you. And I'll give you an example of what actually helped me in the beginning of my career is the internship that I had a desk guaranteed the year before my finals. By the time I joined, they didn't have headcount. And that's something that happens a lot in companies, especially when you go through cycles. But by that point, I knew so many desks that believed in me that I went through the graduate training program with a choice of about 5, because I had invested the time to find fits outside of one. So if that's the experience you're having and you feel like I've got a month and this person's just not getting my contribution, then branch out respectfully. Everything is about respect. You don't want to burn bridges, but if you feel like you're capped with the time, then invest 20% of your time with your immediate manager. Do the job that is required, that's asked, but spend the rest of your time expanding your net wide, because those people will have an impression on you.
Okay, that's great advice. And I'm going to bring up Manur Abdullah. Manur, are you here? Hi, Manur, I see you. I think you're unmuted.
Hey, I'm Manur. I'm here, and I wanted to ask, am I audible there?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. I hope you're all doing well. I just wanted to ask, with a lot of workplaces going remote these days, how do you think interns can really work upon their skills of emotional intelligence, as Sheena mentioned, and other soft skills in general?
Emily, if I can send that
Yeah.
question to you, because you actually talked about that a
Totally.
moment ago.
So I think hybrid and remote is fantastic in terms of flexibility and kind of creating more opportunities to work across different time zones and geographies. That being said, I think especially early on in a person's career, having in-person discussions with your team, with your client, with your boss, whatever it is actually incredibly valuable. So if it's possible, my first suggestion would be find opportunities to actually do things in person. It doesn't have to be 100% of the time. Maybe it's every other week. Maybe it's a couple meetings here and there. But if it's possible, try to avoid a situation where it's a 10-week internship where you're fully remote. I think with kind of the public health situation, it of course depends on each person's comfort level with that. But I just think about and reflect on my career, kind of the first 2 years, I learned so much just watching people in the room, kind of doing things that weren't directly tied to my work, but it actually really informed how I learn. Or there would be a client meeting that my manager would go to and I happen to be there and they would say, hey, I'm going to come along, join the meeting. You can't really do that in a Zoom world because things are so kind of structured and planned, and you lose a lot of that kind of that interpersonal opportunity to kind of meet people and get to know people beyond kind of the professional Zoom screen. That being said, if anybody ends up in a situation where, that's not possible, it is 100% fully remote, then what I encourage you to do is actually discuss with your manager your goals. Like, hey, I want to participate in as many kind of meetings with the broader stakeholders, with the clients. I would like to lead some parts of the presentation. The worst thing they can do is kind of hide behind Zoom and kind of be there, but not kind of having the opportunity to grow. So kind of being very clear about your learning goals and how you can still do that effectively over a remote situation. And then also, I love what Sheena said, it's actually expanding out. The great thing about an internship is, and the great thing about remote is you can do virtual coffee chats with anybody, anywhere. And so I always put a challenge to my interns, try to have 2 to 3 conversations a week with people outside of your team. Like, this is your chance to learn the culture, the values of the company, go out and talk to people in different divisions, different groups. They should have kind of an open door for you because you're an intern and they understand that the point is for you to learn about the company, and they too are invested in cultivating talent in the company. So take that golden ticket of being an intern and just like meet so many people, and you can do that even more so if you are remote.
That is so pertinent to the
Can I
work
just
environment
add
we're in
one
now.
more
Absolutely, Sheena, please do.
suggestion? So based
course.
on, because at one point you also said, how do you develop the soft skills? And I cannot recommend this book enough. Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I read that 8 years into my career, and it was like the Bible of psychology to me. And it made so much sense, and it's applicable to your personal life, your professional life. Read it now, because you will go into your internship with just a set, and it's a cycle. Like read the book and it will make sense, but it's if you go in with a mindset that will automatically prepare you to nurture these soft skills that you're talking about. And how do you prepare for?
Next student, Sharav Rao. Sharav, are you here? Hi, Sharav. If you can unmute yourself, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Hi.
Hello, panelists. Thank you for taking the time to speak to us. My question is involving getting an internship. So you talk a lot about how to handle being in internships or your first job, but being from a non-target school, what is your advice to branching out your networking with career professionals and any finance industry and getting that first internship to build your resume, looking for a full-time role after getting out of college?
Wagner, I'll send that question over to you.
No, that's a great question because I know a lot of people who experience that difficulty. First of all, don't be shy about reaching out to people that you don't know. Number one, because that's what I did. That's how I got my job at IBM. But most companies are going through the process to determine their interns for the summer, for any moment. And unfortunately, I think this is the good news. People are trying to avoid the biases that are inherent in people trying to push friends and family. So I think now we're in a much better place. But unfortunately, you have to go through the process. So how do you get through? It's like hiring. What differentiates you? I think this is an important concept. What's the capability that you bring that might differentiate you as someone who might be a diverse candidate, as someone who is very open to a growth mindset and really showing your capacity to learn, show your propensity to learn. What you have to demonstrate to be selected is your commitment to learning, your commitment to listen, your commitment to learning how to work in new ways. I think one thing that we didn't discuss is you're going to be in situations where there will be multiple leaders in different projects because cross-functional teams are working in very agile ways. So be very comfortable with the agile terminology, do your homework, and show that you can be a person of the future, because that's the way you can prepare yourself. Now, if you don't get an internship, do like me. Focus on getting to know somebody in a company and say, hey, I would love to join to add value to your customers. And then figure it out how somebody can refer you, because that happens. That happened to me.
That happened to me as well. I think that's great advice. Next
Cool.
student, Carol.
Sharav, can I add just a perspective, because what you're talking about, Sharav, and I completely 100% understand that initial chance is everything. What you're up against with your generation is almost, it's gone the other way. So what Wagner has said, not many people did that. Now everybody does that. Like the amount of emails I get from people that have looked at my LinkedIn profile, we've never had a conversation, I don't know who they are, and they email me directly and they're like, can we have a conversation about your job? And I'm like, I believe in this wholeheartedly, but this is not the right path. You are lucky enough, and I say lucky in inverted commas, that every organization, be it McKinsey, be it Deutsche Bank, be it Prudential, we all have from the top committed, and it's a big focus and it's not going anywhere, to bring more diversity into every level, and that starts from your level. So what is but an important focus for every company, be it large or small, is something that you need to tap into. So don't just send out 1,000 emails, because the chances are, even if it hits people that care about it like us, we can't reply to you directly. We can't help you with your own journey immediately. This is why I'm so honored to be part of this particular forum. Like what Paragon One have created is phenomenal, and I wish it had existed. And there's other programs that you'll hear about, like SEO, but Paragon One is really the perfect sort of level. And I would like to see Paragon grow exponentially, and there'll be 10 peers of Paragon One, because this is important. Because I work for a bank and we have very competitive processes for internships. But this is where groups like Paragon One can help the bigger organizations for the pre-phase. And that's yet to come. And hopefully all of us will work to make that more streamlined. But from your standpoint, look at the websites and see what you can apply for through the right channels. That's my first tip for you. And then as well, try and find one or two, but don't send 1,000 blind emails, because even if you hit people that care, the reality is they can't help you when you reach out that way.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions coming in, so I'm going to move along. The next student is Samuel Fahana. Samuel, if you can say your name, your school, and your major.
Hi.
Hi.
All right. My name is Samuel. I'm from Nigeria, and I'm currently a final year student of forestry. So, quickly to my question, I got selected for an internship position recently, and during the first team meeting, I realized I don't have enough skill and experience for the job description. So I want to ask, how can I navigate myself through the internship position, and so I won't disappoint the team and I also meet up with the job demand?
Samuel, I think that's such an interesting question. He got selected for an internship, but he doesn't think he has the skill or experience. So, and he doesn't want to disappoint the team or not meet the job demands, but he already has the internship. What does he do? Who wants to take this question? Emily, go ahead.
I think I can probably safely say that every panelist here has had imposter syndrome before at some point in our careers, if not once, many times. So Samuel, you are not alone. I think when I think about what matters, when I'm looking at talent, there's kind of a skill will matrix. I would way rather have someone who is high will, low skill than someone with high skill and low will, right? So the will and the fact that you're even here asking these questions, like you're there, you're going to be fine, Samuel. So let's get into a bit of tactics, right? So I think I'm not sure what the exact skills are. Maybe it's something around financial modeling. Maybe it's something around building specific perspectives or whatnot. But at least what I would say is find whoever kind of a mentor is, maybe it's a safe buddy or something like that, and ask them like, hey, I want to learn XYZ. How do I learn this? What are the best resources? Can I shadow you? Could you coach me? Can we co-create this? Could we build this together? I never bring an intern onto my team assuming that they are performing as like a person who is 3 years out of school and has done this job for 3 years. I know that they need coaching and apprenticeship, and that's the point. So find that kind of safe person or coach or buddy, and that's kind of one resource. Of course, too, you can also do a lot. There's like so much stuff on the internet, right? Like how do you build a financial model? Like there's YouTube videos, whatnot. I think if you're scrappy and you have the will, you'll find a way, but no one expects you to know everything. And you can use this as an opportunity to upskill yourself.
Great.
Hey, Hannah, if you
Wagner, please.
let me complete this.
Of course.
I come from a clinical background. Like when I used to be executive coach and do coaching and psychotherapy for that matter, a lot of people experience this. One thing for all of you out there, you cannot have a new experience without feeling that you're not qualified for. Otherwise, it's not a new experience. So every time you are confronted with a new experience that's challenging you, see it for what it is. It's just a new experience that will challenge you. And imposter syndrome is the most normal reaction to a new experience. The challenge is to see the little voice saying, hey, you're not good enough. Recognizing, smile at it and say, oh, I see who you are, and I let you be quiet. You know, because you have to recognize we all have it. To the extent that you let that voice be louder is your challenge.
That's great advice. Next student, Fahen Isan, please say your name, school, and major. And you might be on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, hi.
Hello, how you doing? So my question was, what's the most important trait for an entry-level worker to have in a company? Like the most important trait.
Who wants to take that?
I'll go
Sheena?
first, but I feel like we should all take that. Great question.
Sure.
And 100% from my perspective, humility. You will stand out if you have humility, and people will want to help you grow.
Emily, I'm gonna same question.
Yeah, I think it's the will, like being hungry to learn and being hungry to do what it takes. But it's the will.
Wagner?
Yeah, to me, I go back to curiosity. Approach everything with curiosity, and then you feel free to try anything.
Next student, Asif Dar. Asif, hi.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Asif. I'm a rising junior at Lake Forest College at Illinois. My question is to everyone, but it's about, so it's when you're applying to so many places at the beginning stage and everyone is asking you for experience, and it becomes like that catch-22 sort of a thing. You need an experience to apply for a thing, but if you don't apply for a thing, how would you get an experience? So my question is, after so many failures and rejections, how do you utilize such sort of feeling to move forward and utilize it in a better way? Because a lot of us feel demoralized at that stage when you see a lot of rejections. How do you utilize it in a productive way and not go down in this spiral of self-loathing?
Oh, that's such a great question. Who wants to take? I know all of us feel that.
I feel like all of us should.
Yes.
I mean, I just feel like everyone's got their own experience. So Asif, first of all, kudos to you that for being so vulnerable and open
Yes.
on a big platform. Really did, like that alone just made my heart melt and made me think, how can I help him? And what I would say to you is experience is a word that people are tied to. It's a life experience. And I can tell you, every interview I've had, I've talked primarily about the Himalayas, classical Indian dance, never about my career and never about my job. Like it's always been about, so when they say experience, so they'll say to you, you know, team working experience, like think outside the box. I cannot tell you the amount of hires I have made, not just me and the collective firms I've worked for, based on something that stands out about someone. It could be because they've got 6 languages on there. It could be because they play frisbee. I've actually hired someone because they play professional frisbee on the side. They went to a great school, maths, but you see plenty of CVs like that. What stood out and why we ended up hiring him is because he was a professional frisbee player on the side. So experience is a word, don't just associate it with a job, it's your life experience.
I think that's great. We have so many questions coming in, so I'm going to keep it moving if that's okay. The next one is from Ria Shah. Ria, hi.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Hi, Ria.
Hi, nice to meet you guys. It was lovely hearing from everyone. My name is Ria Shah. I'm a rising sophomore at the University of Florida, and I'm doubling in economics and public health. And my question is about business more generally. I know that it's a very broad field that encompasses many different ideas. So my question is, for your specialties, what is one misconception that people have about working in it?
I love that question. Who wants to take that? Sheena, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's actually a great question for an investment bank, because the amount of people that come in and assume you have to be a maths genius is quite surprising. I mean, I did maths at A level, but I can tell you now, if I had gone into a trading role, I probably would have been fired a day later, because my friends tell me all the time, I don't understand your messages because I type with fat fingers. Doesn't make me dumb, but it means that I'm not meant to be a trader. So I think take away your own biases and assumptions of what you believe is required, because especially within big organizations, there are so many roles. Part of the reason why I've never left the sales side is because you can go into something internal facing, you can go into something external facing. Sorry, excuse me. There's so many different roles, so don't put your own biases on it. Like the amount of people we've hired that have history majors, philosophy majors, that's what diversity of thought is important, right? So if you've got experience that doesn't feel like cookie cutter, great, puts you one leg up because you've got a different perspective.
I love that. Next question is from Blessing Ezekiel. Blessing. Hi, Blessing. You might be on mute. Blessing. I see you, but I don't hear you. Okay, I'm going to move on and then we might come back to Blessing. The next one is Amy Singh. Amy.
Hello, hope all of you are doing good.
Hi, we're doing great. Thank you for being on.
Thank you. It's actually Ame.
My apologies, Ami. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So my one question will be like, you all have gone through the student life and you have faced the same like 1159 assignments and every stress that all students go through. What will be your one suggestion to us, as we are going to be a rising senior, like I'm going to graduate next year. What will be your one, like Sheena told me about emotional intelligence. So I never heard about that word. So like,
Emily,
this is something new I'm going to take today, like on May 26th. So,
Emily, I'll send it over to you. Ami, I'm sorry, continue.
So Ami, the question is kind of, what's the one piece of advice for a rising senior and how to kind of tackle your last year?
Yeah.
Look, if I could go back and do it all over again, I would just maximize and diversify my fun experiences. And because like, once you're in the working world, like I have like fantasies about going back to college and just like being a student again and like being a senior and having cool things. Like I think in senior year, like I was a very serious mechanical engineering student. Senior year, I was like, I'm going to try one interesting thing. And I took a photography class. And it was like the best thing that happened to me. I was like, I should have done 6 of those. Maybe you shouldn't just save it for senior year. So also everyone else who's freshmen, sophomore, juniors, like go do cool things in college. Not that your career isn't cool, but the things that you can get exposed to as an undergrad, it's just incredible in terms of the curriculum, the opportunities. And of course, make sure you get a job lined up for after when you graduate. That's of course important. Assuming you have all that ticked and tied, like go do something adventurous, go pick up a new skill, basically make yourself an interesting person, right? I'm sure you are all very interesting, but making yourself interesting in the sense for yourself, for your own happiness, but also it makes it so much you a more interesting person to be around in your professional career as well.
Can I add one more thing?
Please
you need
do,
to add this.
Yes.
Before anything, look at yourself in the mirror and says, it's okay not to be perfect. Avoid the perfectionism that we all have at the end of school, and avoid comparing yourself to others, please. Allow yourself to just focus on your own life, because perfectionism equals torture, and we don't want to torture.
Yes, great advice. Next student, Vijay Krishnan. Vijay. I don't see Vijay, so I'm going to move on to Christopher. Oh, wait. No, Vijay, is that you? I can't. Okay, I'm going to move on to Christopher. Christopher, hi.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, if you can say your name and major.
Sure thing. My name is Christopher Ogumbufumi. I go to Babson College. I'm going to be a senior next year, and I'm majoring in economics. Thank you all for attending this panel. My one question for you will be, what would you say the best way to go about selling yourself at interviews? This year, I've had the chance to interview for quite a number of companies, and there's only so much time you have like during the interview. So what would you say is the best way to go about it in terms of maybe skill set or experience?
Who wants to take that? Wagner, I'll send it your way.
I like the hard questions because this is a really difficult question, but the way you should approach is be quiet. Allow yourself to listen to the person who's interviewing you, because you're going to gain what's important to that person. Your job in an interview is to know what's important to the interviewer. So you might ask, what would be the most important attribute for someone in this role that you're hiring for? Or you might ask, what do you think is the future of this role in the next 3 years? How would you like to see your team be successful in the next year? So ask questions that gives you even more information about how to position yourself. You can be a clairvoyant, is impossible.
Sheena, yes, please go ahead.
Can I just say, because I did an economics major as well, so I just want to give you something to direct. So I think the amount of interviews people come into and they're like, I need to know where the S&P is trading, and I need to tell people don't need you to tell them where levels are trading, but you've got an economics degree. So maybe go in with your thoughts on current events. Like, what do you think about the situation with inflation? It could be food inflation, it could be relative to this country, it could be as a result of the Ukraine-Russia situation, the repercussions across the globe. So go in with a theme, because you're doing actually a degree that's broad enough that you can talk about markets without actually knowing how to trade them or navigate them. So you can have very philosophical conversations, and out of that, you'll find a connection, you'll find a passion for specific countries or specific concepts. And to Wagner's point, when he meant listen, is the best way you're going to hit the person in front of you is to connect to something that matters to them. It's really all about the person interviewing you, not about you.
That's great advice. I know we have so many questions, but unfortunately we're running out of time. There is so much useful information here, invaluable information that I know I wish I had when I started my career. We're going to close out, but Cody, I'll send it to you first.
Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much, Hannah, for such an amazing event today. And a special thank you also to Sheena, Emily, and Wagner for being fantastic panelists and giving some really amazing advice. If you look at the chat, you can see how much the students really enjoyed it. And to everyone who joined us as an attendee, thank you so much for being here. We hope you enjoyed it and that you now feel a little bit more equipped for your summer interviews and internships as well. Just a reminder that if you are still seeking your next career step or another resume builder, remember that at Paragon One, we're here for you. We offer remote externships all year round. And for more information about those and all of our programs, you can check out the Zoom chat. We're going to be posting some links here. So whether it's our programs, our nonprofit consulting programs, or our programs with Meta or Pfizer or Beats, check those out. We're also going to be running a social media contest. So please make sure you check that out, and we will be emailing you with those details coming up after our event. So with that, that brings us right to time. Again, Henna and Sheena, Wagner, Emily, thank you so much on behalf of all of our students and everyone at Paragon One. Thank you, and we hope everyone has a great rest of your day.